Hello and welcome to Red Red. Today I want to talk about Autobiography of Red by Carson. So a quick confession with this book. So usually when I make videos, I like to make videos pretty quickly after I've read a book because the book is pretty fresh on my mind and I just like to give general impressions. It's not really like I'm going away and writing essays or anything on them. However, with Autobiography of Red, I actually read this about a month and a half ago, and my impression was this: wow, that was amazing. That was a beautiful work. I really adored the entire composition and thoroughly was just enamored by the experience. And Carson is obviously working on such a kind of galaxy brain level of observation and composition that I have no idea how much of this is going over my head, how much I've missed out, and I don't think I can make a video on this because of my fear of just severely underbaking just how good this work is. And so unfortunately I just sort of shelved it for a while, kept reading, kept making videos and doing my thing, and then it just was kind of gnawing away at me where I just thought, I can't not have my praise of this book be on my channel. So I thought, screw it, let's just give it a go. I'll just talk about this. Might be a quick video. I'll give a general idea of what I believe is going on with the construction or the composition of the work, and I'll read some extracts. But essentially my goal for this video is to have a kind of Aladdin and Jasmine, like, do you trust me? I'm not going to tell you that much about the book. I just want you to trust me that it's worth your time and your money to go out and buy it and read it as soon as you can. So, quick background of Carson and sort of what I know about her and what I've read. This is the second book of hers that I've read. I have also got and read Eros the Bittersweet, which is an essay collection where she's kind of analyzing and talking about the history of love, or Eros being referred to as bittersweet, going from a whole bunch of Greek and Roman poets. And I loved it. I just thought, wow, this is such a kind of brilliant mind, and I love the way that she thinks about things. And from what I know about Carson is she's a Canadian author who also works like teaching ancient Greek and Hellenic. And so that sort of leads into Autobiography of Red. And the idea of this book is that it's based off some fragments of a poem by a poet named Stesichorus. And so to give a kind of brilliant introduction to Stesichorus, Carson writes on the first page, "He came after Homer and before Gertrude Stein, a difficult interval for a poet," which is obviously like 2,500 years. But in terms of, one thing I'll say before I jump into it, some other things of Carson's that I've experienced is just watching her interviews and her lectures online. She has an interview with Michael Silverblatt, who is basically my spirit animal, and she also has a lecture called sort of on skywriting, and both of them I really recommend. And just to kind of give you an example of the humor, the dry wit that she has, but just this like haziness, this metaphysical haze about her being where you almost feel like you can't touch her because your hand's sort of gonna just go right through her. Yeah, she's got this kind of phase shifting, almost like a cat that can walk through walls essence about her. That's just so cool, and I really love how that comes through. And it's like obviously like she sort of composed herself in a similar way to her writing. But yeah, I'm gonna just read some examples of some of the really beautiful poetry because this is a novel in verse. It'll be pretty quick to read as well, even though the book is about 140 pages. I would say that this is still a one-day read, and you'll definitely be able to smash through it. I'll talk about the like how the book is composed. So jumping back to old mate Stesichorus. Stesichorus was a poet that came about 150 years after Homer, and the book starts. This book starts with an essay called "What Difference Did Stesichorus Make?" And Carson essentially kind of talks about how The difference between Homer and Stesichorus is, in the world of a Homeric epic, for example, being is stable and particularity is set fast in tradition. When Homer mentions blood, blood is black. When women appear, they are neat-ankled or glancing. Poseidon always has the blue eyebrows of Poseidon. God's laughter is unquenchable. Humans' knees are quick. The sea is unwearying. Death is bad. And then jumping a little bit later, Stesichorus released being. All the substances in the world went floating up. Suddenly there was nothing to interfere with horses being hollow-hooved, or a river being root-silver, or a child bruiseless, or hell as deep as the sun is high, or Heracles' ordeal strong, or a planet middle night stuck. And so she then goes on to give more of an analysis. The book is in 7 parts, which there's got to be something going on with the fact that it's in 7 parts, but the next section is fragments of Stesichorus, so I believe this is Carson's loose translation or something of the fragments of a poem by Stesichorus called Geryonesis, which is a epic poem from... So Geryon is a character from Greek mythology who is the monster that Heracles or Hercules has to slay as his in his 10th ordeal or his 10th trial. And the fragments that we've got from Stesichorus show that when Stesichorus wrote the poem about Geryon, he actually wrote it from the monster's perspective, not from Heracles or the hero's perspective. And so that seems to be what Carson is doing in this book as well, where so the main character of this book is Geryon, but instead of mythical times, Geryon is actually a young boy in a modern day life who meets a man named Heracles who is like 2 years his elder, and he falls in love with him, and so it's a kind of romance, and they have a relationship, and then that develops into tragedy and all the things, and it's all just a great story, but it's so metaphysically written that it's just delightful. And again, I am going to read some examples. I'm going to save like plot or spoilers and just try to read examples to give you a taste and hopefully implore you to go out and buy the book. Afterward, we have a couple of appendices where there's some really meta stuff. So afterward, still in the introduction. So there's 3 appendices in the introduction before the main body of text starts. I think that there's some clever Gertrude Stein-ism thingamajigs going on, which unfortunately are going over my head because I've not read Gertrude Stein, which I think is probably a really big blind spot in this, probably akin to my having not read or was akin to my having not read Samuel Beckett before reading Bartlemy. But if you have a good Gertrude Stein work to fill in the gaps of this work, then please do let me know. After that, we get into the main body of text, Autobiography of Red, and then at the end there's an interview, which I think is playing on like a autobiography of Alice B. Toklas idea. But anyway, let's jump in. I'm going to read a couple of examples, and then hopefully that's enough to convince you to go out and buy and read the book. So this is a bit of a content warning, but also a somewhat spoiler warning. Early on, one of the traumatic experiences that informs Geryon and how he kind of moves through the world is that he gets sexually abused by his brother, and this is how Carson sort of writes the experience. Pulling the stick makes my brother happy, thought Geryon. Don't tell Mum, said his brother. Voyaging into the rotten ruby of the night became a contest of freedom and bad logic. Come on, Geryon. No. You owe me. No. I hate you. I don't care. I'll tell Mum. Tell Mum what? How nobody likes you at school. Geryon paused. Facts are bigger in the dark. Then the day after that, that's actually when Geryon starts trying to write his autobiography, or to create his autobiography. And I believe it starts in a form of he's trying to do like sculptures and sort of like doing that, but then it ends up becoming an autobiography through photography, and that is pretty much kind of permeates throughout the rest of the book. So Geryon's mother is talking on the telephone, and then Carson writes, she winked at him over the telephone. He winked back using both eyes and returned to work. He had ripped up some pieces of crispy paper he had found in her purse to use for hair and was gluing these to the top of the tomato. Outside the house, a black January wind came flattening down from the top of the sky and hit the windows hard. This next fragment is after Geryon and Heracles have met and they've sort of become friends. They're hanging out, and then Carson writes, "Some hours later they were down at the railroad tracks, standing close together by the switch lights. The huge night moved overhead, scattering drops of itself." And then just another, oh my god, how, like, I know this is coming from like the woman who wrote an entire essay and book on love, but just, gosh, get a load of this. Geryon was amazed at himself. He saw Heracles just about every day now. The instant of nature forming between them drained every drop from the walls of his life, leaving behind just ghosts rustling like an old map. He had nothing to say to anyone. He felt loose and shiny. He burned in the presence of his mother. In a section called Hades, "Spirit rules secretly alone, the body achieves nothing," is something you know instinctively at 14 and can still remember even with hell in your head at 16. They painted this truth on the long wall of the high school the night before departing for Hades. Heracles' hometown of Hades lay at the other end of the island, about 4 hours by car, a town of moderate size and little importance, except for one thing. And then they talk about a volcano, which becomes quite important, and actually an epigraph to the whole book, or to the core text, is an Emily Dickinson poem that talks about a volcano. An interesting perception, and I don't really have a specific example to read, although there's some that come up later, is that there's Carson. I think that this book can be very important and good to read if you're a trans or a trans questioning person, because there's a kind of remarkable way that Carson writes Geryon's inability to really perceive gender and to perceive sex, and then there's like just scenes where Carson will write something like two men are walking towards Geryon, but they were actually women, or vice versa. And there's a very, just when I wrote about it, that was something that was kind of at the front of my mind, with maybe something Carson was going for. And I'll read one more extract. This is from a chapter called Airplane. As the aeroplane moved over the frozen white flatland of the clouds, Geryon left his life behind like a weak season. Once he'd seen a dog having a rabies attack, springing about like a mechanical toy and falling over on its back in jerky ways as if worked by wires. When the owner stepped up and put a gun to the dog's temple, Geryon walked away. Now leaning forward to peer out the little oblong window where icy cloud light drilled his eyes, he wished he'd stayed to see it go free. And that's all I'm going to say. Again, I've left out core plot and progression ideas. Biggest things for this book or this video is A, let me know what Gertrude Stein I should read to fill in the gaps, because I can tell that her presence is so sort of important in the construction of this work. Let me know what other Anne Carson to read, because I've already bought Red Doc, and I haven't yet read it, but I know I'm definitely going to want to read it very soon. But let me know other Anne Carson works that I should buy to read to sort of get more to experience more of a oeuvre, because I love it, and I'm just amazed at how much I loved this book. Thanks again for watching. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.